Welcome to Daily Papers, the podcast where we break down fascinating new research. Today we're diving into the world of artificial intelligence and the human brain.
We've all seen how AI, like ChatGPT, has gotten incredibly good at predicting the next word in a sentence. But what if we could use that same predictive power to understand the most complex object in the known universe, our own brain?
That is the huge, exciting, and slightly scary question at the heart of today's paper from researchers at Brown University. It asks, will these powerful new AIs, known as foundation models, actually help us understand the brain, or are they just very, very good at guessing?
It's the fundamental difference between knowing what is going to happen and knowing why, a distinction that, as we'll see, is crucial for science.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. The paper talks a lot about foundation models. Most of us have used them, but what exactly are they?
The easiest way to think about it is to imagine giving an AI a gigantic library, basically the entire internet. But you've gone through and blanked out random words. The AI's only job for months on end is to get really, really good at filling in those blanks.
This process is called self-supervised learning. The AI is essentially teaching itself by creating its own quizzes. And after doing this billions and billions of times, it doesn't just learn to fill in a blank. It learned about grammar, context, facts, and even a bit of reasoning.
Exactly. Now, brain scientists are taking this exact same recipe and applying it to their own data. They're feeding these foundation models huge data sets of brain activity or records of human behavior and asking them to predict what happens next.
And the results have been pretty mind-blowing. The paper highlights a couple of recent examples. One AI model was trained on large-scale brain imaging data from the visual cortex of mice.
And it got incredibly good at predicting how a mouse's neurons would fire in response to a new image it had never seen before. It could essentially read the mind of a mouse just by looking at its brain activity.
And another model they mentioned, called Serre, was trained on data from hundreds of different psychology experiments. It learned to predict the next choice a human would make in a variety of decision-making tasks.
The ultimate dream here, which the paper touches on, is to create what's called a digital twin of the brain, a perfect computer simulation that is so accurate it's indistinguishable from the real thing. Imagine being able to test new drugs for Alzheimer's or develop therapies for depression, all on a virtual brain in a computer.
It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but as the paper makes very clear, there is a massive catch.
And this really is the central argument of the whole paper. Just because an AI can perfectly predict what the brain will do, that does not mean we understand how the brain actually does it.
The authors use a brilliant analogy from the history of astronomy to make this point: Ptolemy's model of the solar system.
Right. Way back in ancient Greece, the astronomer Ptolemy came up with this fantastically complicated model where the Earth was at the center of the universe, and the sun and planets moved around it in these complex circles within circles called epicycles.
And the thing is, it worked. His model was impressively accurate at predicting where the planets would appear in the night sky. For centuries, people used it for navigation and calendars.
The predictions were good, but the explanation was completely, fundamentally wrong. The Earth is not the center of the universe. The model was a predictive success, but a scientific failure. The fear is that these new AI models are just modern-day epicycles for the brain.
They might be learning to exploit clever statistical patterns and shortcuts in the data to make their predictions without learning any of the true underlying biological or psychological principles.
We're already seeing hints of this. The paper notes that while the mouse brain model is good, the connections it learns are only partially consistent with real brain anatomy. And Centaur, the decision-making model, sometimes makes its choices using strategies that are totally incompatible with how we know humans think.
So we run the very real risk of replacing one black box, the brain, with another, equally complex and mysterious black box, the AI model. And that doesn't really get us any closer to understanding.
So what's the solution? How do we move from just prediction to actual understanding?
The paper argues that the key is a field called interpretability. It's the science of cracking open the AI's black box to see how it's actually working on the inside.
And researchers are making some fascinating progress. They're starting to find things inside these massive networks that look like functional circuits, dedicated to specific tasks. Even more amazingly, they're finding the AI equivalent of single neurons that respond to very specific concepts.
You mean like the famous Jennifer Aniston neuron? Neuroscientists actually found single brain cells in people that would fire only when the person saw a picture of Jennifer Aniston and not other celebrities.
Exactly. And researchers are finding similar things in AI models. A neuron that activates for the Golden Gate Bridge, for instance. By identifying these building blocks, we can start to form real, testable hypotheses about how our own brains might be organized. We can use the AI as a source of inspiration for new experiments.
So, what's the final verdict from the paper? Will these AI foundation models transform brain science?
The answer seems to be not on their own. They are an incredibly powerful new tool in the toolbox, but they aren't a magic bullet. Their scientific value isn't just in their predictive accuracy.
It's in their potential to be dissected and understood. By moving beyond just looking at the output and instead interpreting the inner workings, we can turn these models from being simple data fitting machines into true theory-bearing scientific instruments.
Tools that can reveal not just what our brains can do, but maybe, just maybe, a little bit more about how they actually work.